Hey everyone, my name is Jack, and what a mess this whole stimulus check situation has been. It's been months since the initial stimulus check package was rolled out, yet millions are still left without their checks. But before I get into that, just want to welcome any of you who are new to the channel. I cover a variety of topics as they relate to investing, real estate, and basically anything relating to personal finance and all of that sort of stuff. So if you like that sort of content, I'd encourage you to take a look around the channel. And if you like what you see, be sure to subscribe. Anyways, it's been almost 3 months since the CARES Act rolled out. The CARES Act being the gigantic stimulus package that the government was rolling out in response to the pandemic and all of the unemployment and the shutdowns that came with it. But it's been almost 3 months since March 27th when that bill was actually signed into a law by the president. For those of you who somehow don't remember, or if you happen to be outside of the US and aren't as familiar with the CARES Act, it actually introduced a variety of funding provisions for corporations and other lifelines to try and keep companies afloat after they had been shut down, but also included a gigantic provision that involved giving $1,200 stimulus checks and some smaller checks to children for anyone in the United States. I shouldn't say anyone in the United States because there are various provisions, but most people were getting stimulus checks for $1,200 apiece. Married couples would get $2,400, and any kids that they had on top of that would be an extra $500 per household. Now, there were income provisions in this package as well, so people who were making a ton of money couldn't get these checks, but the point is, a lot of people were getting these checks, or at least were entitled to get them. But this raised the question, how do you distribute $1,200 payments to hundreds of millions of Americans in a short period of time? The IRS, which is the taxing body in the United States, was the one that was going to be carrying out this payment system for individuals. And specifically, it had 3 methods. One method was to use the direct deposit information that was on file from filing tax returns that anyone who had filed a tax return with direct deposit information had, so they could just get electronic payments very quickly. And electronic payments are the vast majority of the stimulus check payments that have already been made. In fact, 120 million people have already received their direct deposits from the IRS, according to the government itself. But 120 million people is just about a third of the country, so what about the other 2/3? Obviously not all 3/3 of the country were going to get this check, but the majority of the country would, so what about the rest of them? Well, 35 million people got their physical checks mailed to them already, according to the government as well. And an additional 4 million or so actually got an experimental debit card of sorts, probably because the government is trying to see how this would work on a larger scale for the long term if people actually got a government payment card that could easily be refilled quickly rather than having to mail out physical checks to people. And that's really the big problem and the main subject of this video. The logistics of trying to mail out millions and millions of checks have been a complete nightmare. And that's actually on top of other logistical failures that we've already seen. According to the government, there are about 30 to 35 million people remaining who have not received their stimulus check payments. So before I move forward with that, I just want to point out that the government's not even sure how many people are supposed to be getting the check that haven't already gotten it. Their range they gave was 30 to 35 million people. 5 million people is a lot of people, no matter which scale you're using, especially when we're talking about a population. 5 million people are just a statistic? Like, what is the actual range here? How many people haven't actually gotten their stimulus check? The government doesn't even know. It's just amazing because of the size of the US population. It's very difficult to try and get things that really need to be precise here. We need to know who's actually getting this money and to make sure that everyone actually gets it that's supposed to get it. But the government doesn't even know how many of those people are out there. But to add insult to injury, dead people have received stimulus check payments before living people who are supposed to get them. It's just an amazing system we have right now. And this is nothing new. Back in the Obama era, when they did a similar sort of stimulus package where people were getting actually credits and direct payments in response to the global financial crisis, we had dead people getting checks there too. So you think they would have solved this by now, but of course they haven't. Maybe it's unfair for me to nitpick the government like this over a few million check payments in a gigantic stimulus program that involved hundreds of millions of check payments in total, so me nitpicking over a few dead people who get it might be outrageous to some. And you might be totally justified there. But my problem is not with this first program itself. It's the fact that we can't get this first program right, and we're already looking to the second, third, forth, and some infinite number of stimulus checks and universal basic income when we can't even get this first one right, where we have 30 to 35 million people just sitting there waiting for their check after they've probably lost their jobs, or maybe not probably, but many millions of people have lost their jobs and could use that check. And I would assume that people who don't have bank accounts to direct deposit this money into probably aren't as financially well off, or deal only in cash, and probably have other financial difficulties because they don't have access to things like easy credit. So they're probably of the population at least that have more financial difficulties and could really use this $1,200 stimulus check. The point I'm trying to make here is the government is not well equipped to handle this sort of fine-tuned individual welfare program, at least at the federal level. It's just too much for one governing body at the moment, at least, to handle. And it doesn't seem like size is the answer, since the bureaucracy has grown many times over the previous 100 years of U.S. government, yet the efficiency has not grown with that bureaucracy. The bureaucracy arguably causes more inefficiency. And that's a problem for these people who are now still waiting for their checks. And we're supposed to believe that the government can handle a second and a third stimulus program when they can't even get the first one right, and this next program will be much bigger on the individual level. It seems very hard-pressed to make that argument, and very hard to believe. But what we have seen is the government is very well equipped to do corporate bailouts, and helping out its friends in higher places, at least when compared to helping out individuals who probably have a lot more need in the immediate term. I'm not saying that corporations aren't important. Of course they're important. They hire a lot of people, and that's why the government tries to help them, and then at least spins the argument to say that they're trying to save jobs. Because that could be the case a lot of the time. But is it really the case that a very wealthy corporation really needs the money more than the guy who is very hungry right now, or has kids that he's trying to put through school? What's really more important? Well, the government is in a very strange position when it comes to something like this. Because them helping out an individual doesn't get them the same benefit, that is the politicians, than helping out a large corporation who would then give them campaign contributions at the unlimited level through something like a super PAC. It's just part of this flawed, self-reinforcing system that we have that encourages money to circulate between parties to help each other. And by parties, I mean politician to corporation, because a corporation can give unlimited amounts of money to help a person's campaign through a super PAC. Is that really fair? Maybe not. The point is, it's not really a fairness issue that I'm trying to get at. The real problem is that we're getting way ahead of ourselves, trying to pretend like the government, which isn't even incentivized really to try and help individuals as much as it is to help giant lobby groups and giant corporations who will help themselves. And because of that, because they're ill-equipped for this, you have all these millions of people who aren't getting the same benefits as many other millions of people who are entitled to the same things as them. I would just be careful in assuming that the government can just solve all problems by sending checks to people, since it can't even actually send the checks quickly, and some people will be waiting for many more months, since the initial schedule that the government put out was that a lot of people would not be paid until at least September of this year. That isn't a program rolled out in March, after many people lost their jobs in March and April. It's just a super messy situation. It's an unfortunate reality, but I did want to bring it to people's attention before they get carried away in supporting these gigantic new programs that are going to take things to the next level when they can't even get the first level right. And this isn't even to mention the long-term economic consequences of a particular program. I'm just talking about the logistical nightmare that we can't even get over in stage one. And I really don't want to see the fiasco, the comedy of errors that would be a second stimulus plan rolling out before everyone gets theirs from the first plan. And if there is a lesson to get out of this, or at least maybe a word of advice, granted I'm not a financial advisor, but I think this is pretty sound advice. I would not rely on hoping that the government is actually going to pay people as we get through this crisis. A lot of this is probably going to have to be done yourself. You can't really rely on something that can't get the first thing right and hope that it's going to help you many months down the line. Just assume it won't. Maybe it will. Maybe they'll get their act together. Maybe they'll speed this up and actually get things rolling, and they'll create all these wonderful programs. Maybe that'll happen sooner rather than later. But I wouldn't bet on a promise that they've made to you that you're going to be getting this money down the road, because they haven't even been able to get the first stage of that road trip of getting checks out done. Figure out your priorities, cut your expenses if you need to, try to find new ways to make income. I know it's not easy. I'm trying to do that right now as well, since everyone is being hit hard by this whole situation. Just don't try and rely on other people right now. if you can help it. Try to find other ways to make yourself stronger so that you can navigate this crisis. Well, anyways, that's all I've got for today. If you like this video, please like it since it helps the channel out a lot. If you like this sort of content, be sure to subscribe. I put out new videos every single week as they relate to real estate, investing, personal finance, and all sorts of other stuff like that. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything there. And what do you think of this whole stimulus program and everything that's being proposed and all the stuff that's rolling out? Definitely want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. But until next time, take care.